Well, good evening. Thank you very much for coming to this special broadcast here in Campbell Pavilion. Thank you very much for joining me. And tonight I'm very honored to welcome Nicloe Bacharan, historian, a political scientist, George Yates, Republican abroad, France and Britain, and our own Christian Malard, I-24 News, international affairs analyst. Good evening. Thank you very much for coming to this small event that we have here. It's a big event. Definitely, it's a big event. I want to start with you, and this discussion will be starting with the upcoming and with the American Secretary of State, John Kerry, pressing on the Israelis and the Palestinians to reach a framework. I want to ask you tonight a question. The question that I want to ask you is, can the United States impose a peace agreement on the Palestinians and the Israelis? Well, Christian, I know that you have your own idea about this, but maybe I will be more specific, and the right question is, can they impose a peace agreement on both sides that are known of being very, let's say, they love to play the blame game? Nicloe.
You know, I really don't think anyone can impose a peace agreement, whether anyone wants it or not. I do believe that people on both sides have very strong views, have a very strong and difficult experience. I think people on both sides are very tired and very scared, and they need a lot of reassurance, and they need to feel that they want what's going on. However, I see the pressure maybe, but as well the goodwill that John Kerry is putting into this as a good sign, because even if the peace process and the peace agreement cannot be imposed, but I mean, I'm so sure of that.
Because it seems that this time the United States is putting its head, toes, legs, arms on the ground and saying it's going to happen now, whether you like it or no.
No. But I think Israel and the Palestinians need to feel they have backup, they have security, they can count on somebody, and who that somebody is, I guess only the United States. But imposing a peace agreement, no way.
George?
Well, you're not going to get much of an argument from me. I'm perfectly in agreement that you cannot impose peace on anybody who doesn't want it.
You cannot impose peace, but I don't think that Obama is willing to hear no for an answer.
Well, he may not be willing to hear no, but he doesn't dominate the situation. And I think that part of the problem is that Obama is in a particularly weak phase of his presidency. Things are not going his way in any number of fields, and he is, after all, what we call a lame duck. And it seems to me that if he had an opportunity to really accomplish something, it would have been in his first term and not in the second term, which, you know, I will say for most presidents, the second term is not a particularly happy experience. But in his case, it's particularly bad. And I don't think he's in any position to impose anything on anybody.
Christian, I think that you will... I see you laughing, but I think that you probably will agree with that. We've been talking a lot about this subject. Maybe we talked and said maybe he's trying to justify the Nobel Prize that he got for peace for not reaching any peace.
Lucy, which kind of Nobel Prize are you talking about?
I don't know, the one that he got. I didn't get it.
The day when United States, whoever they are, Democrats or Republican, will impose peace on Middle East, I will be dead. Clinton in 2000, July 2000, was very close with Ehud Barak and Arafat. The problem at that time was Arafat. I always called him the tango dancers. 1 foot forward, 3 feet behind. Arafat was that. He was so great as an opponent to Israel. It was his role. It was his role. Now, today I think political will, political courage are not there to really reach a peace process, to reach a lasting agreement. When you hear a few days ago, Mahmoud Abbas congratulated by the Fatah, saying that he doesn't recognize Israel as a Jewish state. How do you want to make peace with such people? I don't speak only about Mahmoud
but
Abbas.
some people will say, Christian Malard, we don't need anybody to impose a Jewish state on us, or maybe even from the Israeli side, they will say, I will tell you, I spoke with economy and finance minister Yair Lapid, which he said, I don't need any recognition from anyone. I don't need the Palestinians to recognize me as a Jewish state. I need to reach an agreement with the Palestinians because in the near future, it won't be very good for the Jewish state.
Ehud Barak used to say, to make peace, you have to be dancing, you have to be two. Today you can't. No way. And I think you have Hamas, who is there, who doesn't want to recognize the existence of Israel. Hezbollah is still anti-Israeli. When you think that President Obama, I consider him as being Jimmy Carter #2, naive, gullible, believing that you can trust Iranian regime, make a deal with Iranian, who holds 4 languages at the same time, are not ready to recognize Israel. So this is why I am very pessimistic. And this administration, I was one of the people as a journalist, believing in Obama. I was happy. But since what I have seen, I am so disappointed, and I'm not the only one. And I agree with what Nicole and George said. I am not optimistic. Not long time ago on I-24 News, you had a poll with your TV viewers, and the question was, are you optimistic for peace in Middle East? Will we reach peace one day? 80% of the TV viewers said no. So I joined this 80%.
So, Nicole, as a historian, you think that this maybe misunderstanding is coming from the lack of understanding on both sides with the history, with the culture differences between the Israelis and the Palestinians, that they cannot act, although they're living on the same land and in the same area, they cannot understand the culture, that it's totally different.
You know, I share all the reasons that George and Christian mentioned to be pessimistic right now, and I see a lot of reasons to be optimistic. I think the cultures, in so many ways, are so close because they share the same piece of land, the same experience in so many ways, the same background in so many ways, the same interests. And on the other hand, as well, to be a little bit on the optimistic side, you know, for so many years, I mean, since I was born at least, I always heard that nothing could be accomplished in the Middle East until the Israeli-Palestinian question is solved. And it was the only reason why things were so difficult in the Middle East. And now the whole region is in a complete turmoil, and we can see that conflict is important, but it is not the key to about anything else. And if you look at the tragic conflict throughout history, and you mentioned, you know, a look back in history, what happened between Ireland and England, France and England, France and Germany, and so many other conflicts. It lasted so much longer. Maybe we are very close to peace in Israel. I think we could be, because for some reason, those two people are pretty much left alone right now, despite the many visits, good-willing visits of John Kerry, because the rest of the area needs immediate attendance.
If you get back to Nicole, if you get back to the roots of our problem, we are not going to remake the world or remake history. But the problem is, when you go back to 66 years ago, it was the problem of a twice promised land. And there is room for everybody today. I think David and Daoud are brothers. They should be together.
You know, I want to take you to the recognition of the Jewish state. Why is it so important to Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu? Is it a tram that he's trying to put to the Palestinians, and actually the Palestinians just got right into it and they're playing the game that Benjamin Netanyahu prepared for them? Because for sure, I believe that Benjamin Netanyahu said to himself, I will say I want to impose the recognition of a Jewish state. The Palestinian probably will say, we don't. We're not going to do it. So they're right now playing this, let's say, game of we're going to make John Kerry's life very, very hard.
Well, I'm not so sure that the point is to make John Kerry's life very hard. I think John Kerry is working pretty hard. But I do think you put your finger on something that's important, and that is that there has to be some question as to whether people in Palestine and perhaps even in Israel have an interest in keeping this dispute going. Because it seems to me that the people in both territories have been put through such horrible situations, and probably the Palestinians even more so than the Israelis. But if living under such bad conditions and with the threat of being killed every day doesn't do the trick, I'm not quite sure what will. There must be a fundamental misunderstanding among the people, and maybe their leaders have some interest in keeping that misunderstanding misunderstood.
So, just today we got maybe the perfect example about the situation in the Middle East. We are sitting right now in Paris, but what is happening right now in these hours in Israel between the Gaza Strip and the south, the situation in southern Israel, maybe is giving the biggest example about how the situation is very complicated, how Gaza is really disconnected from what is happening right now in the West Bank.
Lucy, I would like to say, even if some policy of settlements by Netanyahu sometimes might be perceived by the Palestinians as a kind of provocation, globally, I agree with Netanyahu on the fact that he cannot make today that many concessions. Because when you look at the environment, Egypt could have got to the worst with the Muslim Brotherhood. I feel like saying as an observer, fortunately, even if the army is not perfect, they are back. Because you would have had an Egypt with Islamic Republic.
Christian, you don't think that this situation right now in the Arab world is maybe the best strategic situation that Israel been in years?
No, but it's the worst situation with Egypt, Syria, Iran, Hezbollah.
They're fighting themselves. They're fighting themselves.
I would not say that. Who is fighting themselves? You mean Shia versus Sunni?
Shia versus Sunni.
Yes.
We're seeing it like, we can call it like an inside collapse
but on Iran,
of the Arab world.
Iran, the extraordinary things concerning the Iranian nuclear program, whatever, is you have an unheard of alliance between Israel and Saudi Arabia, which are on the same side because they have one common enemy, which is Iran. On that, I agree with you. Things are changed. They are fighting Sunni versus Shia. But at the same time, the environment cannot encourage Prime Minister Netanyahu to make the concessions.
I will make your life even maybe a little bit harder because, the Palestinian issue was always an issue for the Arab world. The Palestinian conflict was always let's say, the card that the Arab world played against Israel. And they said, because you're treating the Palestinians like you're treating the Palestinians, we are not with you. But right now, there is a certain, let's say, window of opportunity. The Arab world is, in this way or another, collapsing in itself. Israel is sitting on the fence watching the whole event. And right now, the Palestinians, maybe this is the time to reach an agreement with the Palestinians because the Arab world won't have any more cards against Israel because that was the strongest card.
But you need to change the state of mind. Hamas and Fatah, I'm sorry, they have not shown their real will to have a peace agreement. Let's be serious on that. They have not shown the will to go. Mahmoud Abbas is a puppet on the string. Hamas is holding the thing with Iran behind. As long as we have not solved the Iranian problem, you have all this game going on around, which will lead nowhere.
Nicole, can you change a state of mind?
Yeah, I think you can. And actually, I'm kind of struck by what Christian mentioned about this objective alliance between Israel and Saudi Arabia right now, as well as, there are so many common interests in the region beyond the situation between Israel and Palestine. And you mentioned so rightly that the Palestinian card has been played forever against Israel. But I traveled, I observed through decades now the way Palestinians were treated in Saudi Arabia, where they were refugees, in Jordan, where they were refugees, in Syria, where they were refugees. And honestly, everybody knows it was worse. But as you said, the Syrians are fighting each other. I mean, it's dreadful. I can't sleep at night if I read what's going on there, with civilian populations, children, mothers, older people. But they don't have time to look at Israel, although they might want to involve it. And Israel is kind of looking, what's going on above their heads.
I think that we can discuss the Israeli-Palestinian issue for a long, long time. Gentlemen,
yes.
my lady, thank you very much for
Thank you, Lucy.
being with me right
Great
now.
pleasure to be with you.
You are going to come back just in a small bit. Thank you very much for this.
Thank you.
Thank you,
Thanks,
Lucy.
Lucy.